It was a chilly October evening, and Sarah had just finished her late-night shift at the small, dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. As she locked up and stepped into the empty, moonlit streets, an eerie feeling washed over her. She couldn't shake the sensation that she was being watched. Her footsteps echoed in the silent darkness, and the only sound was the distant hoot of an owl. Sarah quickened her pace, but the feeling of being followed intensified. She turned around, scanning the shadowy alleyways and desolate sidewalks, but there was nothing there. Just the empty, quiet town. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she reasoned that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. As she walked past the flickering streetlights, their feeble glow seemed to wane with every step she took. The town, which had always felt like a safe haven, now seemed like a labyrinth of nightmares. Sarah couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling any longer. She reached for her phone, intending to call for a cab, but her trembling fingers struggled to dial the number. When she finally managed to make the call, the line was dead. Panicked, Sarah decided to head for her friend Lisa's house, just a few blocks away. She started to run, the echo of her footsteps reverberating through the empty streets. The sensation of being pursued was relentless, like a shadow that clung to her every move. As she approached Lisa's house, a sense of relief washed over her. She pounded on the front door, tears of fear welling up in her eyes. But no one answered. She knew Lisa was home. They had made plans earlier that evening. The lights inside were on, and she could hear faint laughter and music. Sarah hesitated, her unease growing. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to listen, but the laughter and music suddenly stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. She called out to Lisa, but there was no response. Fear gnawed at her insides as she realized something was terribly wrong. She turned to leave, but stopped dead in her tracks. Standing in the dimly lit street was a tall, shadowy figure. It had no discernible features, just a vague, human-like silhouette. Sarah's heart raced, and she stumbled backward, her mind racing for a way out. The figure advanced, its movements slow and deliberate. Panic consumed her, and she darted down a nearby alley, hoping to lose the relentless pursuer. But the alley seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning, with no way out. The oppressive darkness closed in around her, and she could hear the figure's soft, sinister laughter echoing in the distance. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she realized the chilling truth. She was trapped in a nightmarish maze, pursued by an unknown entity. Her only hope was to find a way out and escape the relentless pursuer. But the town that had once been her sanctuary had become a haunting nightmare, and the darkness threatened to consume her entirely. As she continued to run through the labyrinthine streets, Sarah's mind raced with fear and desperation, and she knew that the only way to survive was to unravel the mystery of the shadow pursuit and confront the malevolent force that pursued her. But could she escape the relentless grasp of the darkness, or would she become just another victim of the chilling, unseen terror that lurked in the night? Sarah's breathless escape through the twisting alleyways seemed endless, each turn leading her deeper into the labyrinth. The shadowy figure continued to stalk her, a sinister presence just out of her peripheral vision. Every time she turned to confront it, it vanished, only to reappear when she least expected it. The town, once familiar, now felt like a nightmare. Buildings leaned ominously, their windows dark and vacant. The streetlights flickered and cast eerie, elongated shadows that seemed to reach out for her. The moon, shrouded by thick clouds, offered no solace, its light obscured. Desperation fueled her every step as Sarah pushed on, determined to escape her pursuer. She remembered a hidden shortcut she had used as a child, a narrow alley that led to the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. It was a dangerous route, but it might be her only chance to shake off the relentless presence. As she darted into the narrow alley, the air grew colder and the darkness thickened. Her footsteps echoed through the stillness, loud in her ears. Sarah's pulse raced, her fear pushing her to the limits of endurance. She stumbled over cobblestones and old, cracked gravestones, her breath hitching with each frantic step. The moonlight broke through the clouds, casting an eerie glow on the graveyard. Sarah scanned her surroundings, her heart pounding in her chest. She was alone, at least for now. But the ominous feeling of being watched had not waned. Hesitating only for a moment, she moved deeper into the cemetery, her footsteps echoing among the rows of weathered tombstones. The pursuit had become a sinister game, a deadly cat and mouse. She had to find a way to break free. A chilling wind swept through the graveyard, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. She couldn't see the figure, but she felt its presence closing in, like a predator drawing near its prey. Panic clouded her, threatening to overwhelm her senses. And then, as she passed an ancient mausoleum, she heard a voice. A faint, disembodied whisper that sent icy chills down her spine. It was a name, her name, whispered in a haunting, raspy tone. Sarah. She whirled around, her eyes scanning the shadows. There, in the dim light, she saw it. The figure, no longer just a silhouette, but a shadowy, shifting entity with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into her very soul. The figure reached out towards her, and Sarah's scream pierced the night. With newfound determination, she turned and sprinted deeper into the cemetery, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. She had to find a way out, a way to escape this nightmare. As she ran, the gravestones seemed to close in around her, the air grew colder, and the moon disappeared behind thick clouds once more. The relentless pursuit continued, a terrifying dance between life and an unseen, malevolent force that showed no mercy. Sarah's only hope was to unravel the mystery of this shadow pursuit and find a way to break free from the darkness that threatened to consume her. But the cemetery held secrets of its own, and as the night wore on, she would discover that the true horror lay not just in being followed home, but in the sinister forces that lurked in the heart of the town she thought she knew so well. Story 2. The night was pitch black as Jake stumbled out of the local pub, his senses dulled by the alcohol he had consumed to drown his sorrows. He had recently lost his job and, with it, his sense of purpose. Now, he trudged down the desolate, rain-soaked streets, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty night. As he walked, the rain fell harder, soaking him to the bone. A cold chill ran down his spine, but he dismissed it as a result of the damp weather and the alcohol. However, a nagging feeling grew within him, the feeling that he was not alone. Jake quickened his pace, trying to shake off the unease, but the sensation of being followed only intensified. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw nothing but the deserted street. His imagination must be playing tricks on him. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call a cab, but it slipped from his fingers and shattered on the wet pavement. Cursing under his breath, he continued his stumbling journey home. A sudden whisper of a voice, barely audible over the sound of the rain, sent a shiver down his spine. It was as if someone was speaking to him from just beyond the edge of hearing. He stopped in his tracks and looked around, but the empty street offered no clues. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. No response. Jake resumed walking, his heart pounding in his chest. The unease gnawed at him, making every step a torment. He knew he needed to get home, to the safety of his apartment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was lurking in the shadows. As he turned a corner onto a dimly lit alley, the feeling of being followed intensified. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and he could hear the soft, deliberate footsteps behind him. Panic surged through his veins, and he broke into a run, splashing through puddles as he fled. The footsteps quickened to match his pace, a relentless pursuit that seemed to gain ground with each passing moment. Jake's breath came in ragged gasps as he sprinted through the rain-soaked streets, his heart threatening to burst from his chest. Finally, he reached his apartment building and fumbled for his keys, his trembling hands struggling to unlock the door. He burst inside, slammed the door shut, and leaned against it, panting heavily. He was safe, or so he thought. As he caught his breath, he heard it again, the faint whisper, the voice just beyond his hearing. It seemed to come from inside his apartment. Fear gripped him as he slowly turned around, scanning the dimly lit room. And there, in the corner of the room, he saw it, a shadowy figure, a dark silhouette that should not have been there. It had no discernible features, just a formless presence. Jake's heart raced as he watched the figure draw closer, its movements slow and deliberate. He backed away, stumbling over furniture, but the figure followed, always just a step behind. It was an unseen passenger, a malevolent force that had latched onto him in the night. As the figure closed in, Jake's mind raced for a way to escape. He had to unravel the mystery of this haunting presence and find a way to rid himself of it. But the apartment, once his sanctuary, had become a chamber of horrors, and the relentless pursuit showed no signs of relenting. In the darkness of that fateful night, Jake's battle for survival had just begun, and the true horror lay not just in being followed home, but in the enigmatic and chilling entity that had become his uninvited companion. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he retreated further into his apartment, the shadowy figure inching closer with each deliberate step. The room seemed to close in on him, the air growing colder and heavier with an ominous presence. Desperation fueled Jake's actions as he considered his limited options. He needed to find a way to confront or escape this malevolent entity that had infiltrated his life. His eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that might help him. He reached for his phone, intending to call for help, but the screen remained dark and unresponsive. It was as if the very essence of the room had snuffed out any source of light and communication. The figure, shrouded in darkness, continued to approach, its unnatural presence filling the room with dread. Jake's mind raced, trying to piece together what had brought this sinister force into his life. Had he unwittingly crossed some dark threshold? Was this a manifestation of his own guilt and despair? In a last-ditch effort, Jake grabbed a nearby table lamp and hurled it at the figure. The lamp passed through the shadowy form without resistance, crashing into the wall and shattering into pieces. It was as if the entity was impervious to the physical world. With nowhere else to go, Jake retreated into the bathroom, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He locked the door behind him, hoping it would provide some semblance of safety. But the whispering voice, faint yet chilling, continued to permeate the room. "What do you want from me?" Jake demanded, his voice trembling with fear. The entity remained silent, its presence pressing against the bathroom door, an invisible malevolence that seemed to seep through the cracks. Jake's reflection in the bathroom mirror revealed a face contorted by terror and confusion. Suddenly, the voice spoke, a raspy, otherworldly tone that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. "You cannot escape what you've brought into your life, Jake." His mind raced, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. Had he unwittingly invited this entity through some act or choice? He racked his brain for any recent events that might explain this nightmare. Memories flooded back to him, an old book he had borrowed from a dusty shelf at the local library, a forgotten incantation, a momentary lapse in judgment. He had dabbled in the occult out of curiosity, never taking it seriously. Could that have summoned this malevolent presence? The entity's presence inched closer, the bathroom growing colder with each passing moment. Panic surged through Jake as he realized he might have to face the consequences of his actions head-on. With trembling hands, he began to recite the incantation from memory, the words flowing from his lips in a desperate attempt to banish the entity. The room vibrated with an otherworldly energy, and the shadowy figure recoiled, its presence weakening. Jake continued to chant, the words gaining strength, and with a final burst of determination, he cried out the incantation's last verse. In an instant, the entity let out a blood-curdling shriek and dissipated, leaving behind an empty bathroom. Exhausted and trembling, Jake slumped to the floor, his heart still racing. He had confronted the relentless pursuit that had plagued him, a pursuit that was a consequence of his own curiosity and carelessness. As the first light of dawn broke through the window, Jake knew he had narrowly escaped a malevolent force that had followed him home. He had learned a harrowing lesson about the dangers of dabbling in the unknown, and he would never forget the night when his life had become a living nightmare. Story 3. The rain pounded on the windshield, creating a chaotic symphony of splashes and drops. Mark had been driving through the desolate countryside for hours, and the storm showed no sign of letting up. The rhythmic patter of rain had become hypnotic, lulling him into a sense of solitude as he navigated the winding, isolated road. His car's headlights cut through the downpour, revealing nothing but the thick, impenetrable darkness that enveloped the landscape. Mark was tired, and his eyelids drooped as he fought to stay alert. He longed for the comfort of his own bed, the warmth of home, but he still had a long way to go. Then, just as he contemplated pulling over to rest, he saw her, a figure standing at the side of the road, drenched by the relentless rain. Her silhouette was hazy, her features obscured by the night, but she waved frantically for him to stop. Mark hesitated. He heard stories about hitchhikers in the middle of the night, cautionary tales of danger and deceit. But the storm was unrelenting, and he couldn't leave someone stranded in such terrible weather. With a sigh, he pulled over, and the woman quickly climbed into the car, her clothes dripping with rainwater. She appeared to be in her 20s, with disheveled hair and a look of desperation in her eyes. "Thank you so much for stopping," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been walking for hours, and I was starting to think I'd never get a ride." Mark offered her a warm smile. "No problem. It's a nasty night out there. Where are you headed?" She hesitated for a moment, as if considering her response, before finally saying, "Just up the road a bit. I'll let you know when to stop." As Mark continued to drive, conversation flowed between them. She introduced herself as Emily and told Mark about her long journey to visit a friend who lived in a remote cabin in the woods. The more she spoke, the more Mark felt a sense of unease. Something about her story just didn't add up. He glanced at the rearview mirror, and that's when he saw it, a faint, ghostly reflection in the back seat. It was Emily, or so he thought, but her eyes were different, vacant, and devoid of emotion. She was staring at him with an unsettling intensity. Mark's heart raced as he realized he had made a grave mistake. He had picked up a stranger in the middle of the night, and now he was alone on a dark, isolated road with someone who wasn't what she appeared to be. Suddenly, Emily's demeanor shifted. Her smile twisted into a sinister grin, and her voice took on an eerie, otherworldly quality. "You shouldn't have stopped," she whispered, her words sending a chill down Mark's spine. Terrified, Mark slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the side of the road. He reached for his phone, but it was gone, vanished from the center console where he had left it. Emily's ghostly reflection in the rearview mirror grew closer, and Mark knew he had to get out of the car. With a surge of adrenaline, he flung open the door and bolted into the pouring rain, not daring to look back. As he ran, he could hear Emily's haunting laughter echoing in the distance, mingling with the relentless rhythm of the rain. Mark's only chance at survival was to escape the clutches of the midnight hitchhiker and the malevolent force that had lured him into her car on that fateful, stormy night. Mark's soaked clothes clung to his trembling body as he sprinted down the dark, winding road, the rain obscuring his vision. Panic and fear coursed through him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Emily, or whatever she was still lurking nearby, ready to pounce. He couldn't hear her footsteps over the sound of the torrential rain, but that didn't mean she wasn't there. His mind raced with thoughts of what might happen if she caught up to him. Had he narrowly escaped a malevolent entity? Or was Emily just a pawn in a sinister game? Desperation guided his steps as he continued to run through the darkness, the road winding and seemingly endless. He needed to find shelter, to get as far away from the car and the unsettling hitchhiker as possible. Finally, he spotted a dilapidated, abandoned farmhouse up ahead, its windows shattered and its roof sagging. It wasn't an ideal refuge, but it was better than being out in the open with Emily, or whatever she was, closing in. Mark burst through the farmhouse's creaking front door, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The interior was as eerie as the storm outside, with dust-covered furniture and cobwebs hanging in every corner. But it was dry, and for the moment, it offered safety. He barricaded the door with a heavy wooden plank he found in a nearby room, doing his best to secure it against any potential intrusion. As he caught his breath, he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Had he been lured into a trap by a supernatural entity, or had he simply encountered a deranged and dangerous woman? The rain outside continued to pour, the storm showing no signs of relenting. Mark knew he couldn't stay in the farmhouse indefinitely. He needed to find a way back to civilization, to get help, and to make sense of the inexplicable events of the night. Carefully, he approached a cracked window and peered outside. The rain was still coming down in torrents, obscuring his view of the road. He couldn't see Emily's car or any sign of her presence, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was out there, waiting in the shadows. With a deep breath, Mark made a decision. He would wait out the storm, hoping for a break in the weather that would allow him to make a run for it. He needed to find his phone, which had mysteriously disappeared from the car, and contact the authorities. Hours passed in tense silence as Mark kept a vigilant watch on the door and the windows. The rain finally began to let up, and a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness. It was time to make his move. Mark removed the makeshift barricade from the door and stepped cautiously outside. The night air was cold and damp, but the rain had reduced to a drizzle. He retraced his steps along the winding road, every nerve on edge, but he saw no sign of Emily or her car. Eventually, he reached a small, remote gas station where he found a phone and called the police. When they arrived, he told them his harrowing story, but they found no trace of Emily or her car. To this day, Mark isn't sure whether he encountered a malevolent spirit, a deranged hitchhiker, or something even more sinister on that stormy night. All he knows is that he narrowly escaped a terrifying encounter, and the memory of the midnight hitchhiker will haunt him forever. Story 4. The ancient forest of Eldertree had always been a place of mystery and legend. Tangled trees with gnarled roots stood tall, their leaves forming a thick canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The locals spoke in hushed tones about the Whispering Grove, a part of the forest where the trees seemed to communicate with one another in a strange, melodic language. Amelia, an adventurous young woman with a fascination for the supernatural, decided to venture into the Whispering Grove one crisp autumn afternoon. Armed with a backpack filled with supplies and a sense of curiosity that burned brighter than the setting sun, she followed a narrow, winding path into the heart of the forest. As she ventured deeper into the grove, the air grew colder, and the whispers of the trees became more pronounced. It was as if the very essence of the forest was alive and sentient, its ancient secrets waiting to be uncovered. Amelia spotted a particularly majestic tree with twisted branches and leaves that glowed a vibrant shade of red. She approached it and placed her hand on the rough bark, feeling a strange, electric energy coursing through her. The tree seemed to respond to her touch, its whispers growing louder and more distinct. "Welcome, traveler," the tree murmured in a haunting, ethereal voice. Startled but intrigued, Amelia replied, "Who are you?" "I am Eldertree, the guardian of this grove," the tree answered. "You have entered a realm of ancient knowledge, where the secrets of the forest are laid bare." Amelia's heart raced with excitement as she realized the magnitude of the encounter. She asked the tree about the forest's mysteries, about the legends that had drawn her here. Eldertree spoke of a hidden portal within the grove, a gateway to another world where forgotten truths and ancient wisdom resided. But it came with a warning: the portal was a two-edged sword, and those who entered might never return. Amelia was undeterred by the ominous warning. She yearned for knowledge and adventure, and the allure of the portal was too strong to resist. With Eldertree as her guide, she followed the whispers deeper into the grove until she reached a massive, ancient oak. The tree's whispers grew louder, resonating through her very being. A swirling vortex of energy appeared before her, and she hesitated only for a moment before stepping through. On the other side, she found herself in a realm of enchantment. The sky was an endless tapestry of stars, and strange, luminescent creatures flitted through the air. The ground was covered in shimmering moss, and the trees sang with a haunting melody. Amelia explored this ethereal world, discovering hidden knowledge and ancient secrets that had been lost to time. She learned of the forest's ability to heal, to reveal the past, and to glimpse into the future. Days turned into weeks, and Amelia was filled with a sense of wonder and contentment. But as time passed, she realized that she had lost all track of it. She could no longer remember the way back to the portal. She wandered through the enchanted realm, her curiosity turning to desperation. The beauty of the world around her had become a prison, and she longed to return to the mortal realm. In the Whispering Grove, Eldertree watched and whispered its mournful song, a lament for the adventurous soul who had become lost in the depths of the enchanted forest. Amelia's fate served as a haunting reminder that the ancient mysteries of Eldertree's realm were not to be trifled with, and the allure of knowledge could lead one down a path from which there might be no return. Amelia's days turned into months, and the months into years. Time flowed differently in the enchanted realm, and she began to lose track of how long she had been wandering its ethereal landscapes. The beauty that had once entranced her now felt like a cage, and she yearned to return to the mortal world. She often sought out Elder Tree's presence in her wanderings, hoping that the guardian of the Whispering Grove might provide guidance or a way back home. Each time she approached the ancient oak, its whispers would grow softer, as if it had lost hope in her return. One fateful day, as Amelia stood before Elder Tree, tears streaming down her face, the tree's voice grew clearer, more resolute than ever before. "You must seek the Fountain of Echoes," it whispered. "Only there can you find a path back to your world." With newfound determination, Amelia set out on a quest to find the elusive Fountain of Echoes. Elder Tree's whispers guided her through the enchanted realm, leading her through lush meadows, over crystal clear streams, and into the heart of the forest's most mystical places. Her journey was fraught with challenges. She encountered mischievous spirits and cunning riddles, but her determination never wavered. She knew that the only way to escape the enchantment of the Whispering Grove was to reach the Fountain of Echoes. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Amelia stood before the shimmering waters of the fountain. It was a sight to behold, a pool of liquid light that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. She knelt at its edge and whispered her heartfelt plea to return home. The waters of the fountain responded, their surface rippling with power. A shimmering portal opened before her, and she could see the familiar sights of her own world on the other side. Amelia stepped through the portal, feeling a surge of joy and relief as she returned to the mortal realm. She found herself standing once again before Elder Tree, who whispered one final message to her. "Remember the lessons you've learned here," the ancient guardian said. "Knowledge and curiosity are powerful, but they must be tempered with wisdom and respect for the boundaries of the unknown." With gratitude and newfound wisdom, Amelia made her way back to the outside world, carrying with her the experiences and mysteries of the enchanted realm. The Whispering Grove and Elder Tree had taught her the value of balance and the importance of respecting the boundaries between worlds. She had ventured into the realm of ancient knowledge, explored its enchantments, and returned with a greater understanding of the world she had left behind. And as she stepped out of the Whispering Grove, the haunting whispers of the trees faded into the distance, a reminder of the mysteries that still remained hidden in the heart of the forest. Story 5. Nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, the small town of Cedarville was known for its picturesque landscapes and friendly residents. But there was one place that had always been shrouded in mystery, the old Abbott house, a Victorian mansion that stood atop a hill, its once grand facade now worn and weathered. As the sun dipped below the horizon one cool autumn evening, a group of friends decided to explore the Abbott house, drawn by the legends of strange happenings within its walls. Sarah, Mike, Emily, and Chris had all grown up hearing tales of ghostly apparitions and eerie music that emanated from the house on moonless nights. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they ascended the overgrown path that led to the mansion's imposing entrance. The wind whispered through the surrounding trees, and the night seemed darker than they had anticipated. The front door creaked open with a haunting groan, revealing the mansion's long-forgotten grandeur. Dusty chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and faded wallpaper peeled away from the walls. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence that seemed to seep into their very bones. Emily shivered, feeling an inexplicable unease as they explored room after room. They passed a grand piano, its keys dust-covered and worn, and a shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she caught sight of it. It was said that the haunting melody often emanated from that very instrument. They ventured deeper into the house, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. As they reached the top of a grand staircase, they heard it, a haunting, ethereal melody that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The music was beautiful, yet tinged with sorrow, as if it carried the weight of centuries of forgotten memories. The friends followed the haunting sound, their flashlights guiding them through the labyrinthine corridors. They entered a dimly lit chamber at the end of a long hallway. In the center of the room, a spectral figure stood, her fingers gracefully dancing across the keys of the grand piano. She wore a gown of another era, and her features were a blur of sadness and longing. The room was filled with a melancholy tune, its notes weaving a story of love and loss. The apparition's fingers moved effortlessly, as if lost in the music of another time. Sarah, Mike, Emily, and Chris watched in awe, unable to tear their eyes away from the mesmerizing scene. The ghostly pianist seemed to acknowledge their presence with a faint smile, her eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. As the last notes of the haunting melody faded into the air, the apparition turned to them, her eyes locking onto theirs. Without speaking a word, she seemed to convey a profound message, a story of love and tragedy that had transcended time. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she felt the ghostly presence as emotions wash over her. The friends knew that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a glimpse into the past and a connection with a spirit that had been bound to the old mansion for generations. With a final, graceful bow, the ghostly pianist vanished, leaving behind a lingering sense of peace and closure. The friends left the Abbott house that night with a deeper understanding of the mysteries of the past and a newfound appreciation for the haunting melody that still echoed through the old mansion's walls. The legend of the Abbott house lived on, not as a tale of fear, but as a story of love and the enduring power of music to bridge the gap between the living and the departed. Over the following weeks, Sarah, Mike, Emily, and Chris couldn't shake the haunting memory of the ghostly pianist and her bittersweet melody. They were drawn back to the Abbott house, compelled to uncover the story behind the spirit's presence. They researched the mansion's history and soon learned of the tragic love story that had unfolded within its walls. In the late 1800s, a talented pianist named Eliza Abbott had lived in the house. She had fallen in love with a visiting artist named Samuel, and their passionate romance had blossomed amid the opulent surroundings of the mansion. But tragedy had struck when Samuel had been called away, leaving Eliza heartbroken. She had waited for his return, devoting her days and nights to her piano, composing a hauntingly beautiful melody that expressed the depths of her love and sorrow. Samuel never returned, and Eliza's heartache had consumed her. She had passed away alone, her music echoing through the house, an eternal reminder of her lost love. The friends decided to hold a memorial for Eliza, a tribute to her music and the love she had felt for Samuel. They gathered in the dimly lit chamber where they had first encountered the ghostly pianist, and Emily, an accomplished pianist herself, played Eliza's haunting melody on the grand piano. As the mournful notes filled the room, the atmosphere seemed to come alive with the presence of the long-departed lovers. A soft breeze rustled the curtains, and the chandeliers flickered with a ghostly glow. In that moment, the friends felt a profound connection to the past, as if Eliza and Samuel were there with them, united in love through the timeless power of music. When the last note faded, the room grew still, and a sense of peace settled over them. It was as if Eliza's spirit had finally found closure, her love and music embraced by the living. As the friends left the Abbott house that day, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they had honored the memory of Eliza and Samuel. The legend of the haunting melody had transformed from a tale of fear into a story of love and remembrance. And though the mansion would forever be steeped in mystery, it had become a place where the past and present converged, where the enduring power of love and music transcended the boundaries of time and mortality. The Abbott house remained a place of wonder and reverence, a testament to the enduring bonds of the human spirit. Story 6. Nestled on a remote island off the coast of Maine stood the lonely Rockhaven Lighthouse. It had been a beacon of hope for sailors navigating treacherous waters for generations, but it was also the keeper of a chilling secret, one that had been carefully concealed for over a century. The lighthouse was currently manned by Robert, a dedicated and solitary keeper who had spent the better part of his life on the island. Robert had heard whispers of the lighthouse's mysterious past, but he had never truly believed the tales until that fateful night when he stumbled upon a hidden door in the lighthouse's tower. Curiosity got the better of him, and he couldn't resist exploring the passage that led deep into the heart of the rocky island. The narrow tunnel opened into a hidden chamber filled with ancient journals, maps, and artifacts that hinted at a dark and enigmatic history. The more Robert delved into the records, the more he realized the lighthouse had served a dual purpose. Yes, it had guided ships to safety, but it had also been a repository of forbidden knowledge, a place where dark rituals and secrets were buried beneath layers of time. One journal in particular, written by a former keeper named Elias, detailed a chilling pact made with a malevolent entity in exchange for the lighthouse's uncanny ability to guide ships away from danger. Elias had sacrificed his own soul to seal the pact, and the entity's influence had tainted the very foundation of the lighthouse. Robert couldn't ignore the truth any longer. He knew he had to confront the malevolent force that had been trapped within the lighthouse for so long. Armed with knowledge from the journals, he began to perform rituals to weaken the entity's hold on the lighthouse. As the days turned to weeks, Robert could feel the entity's presence growing stronger and more agitated. Strange and unsettling phenomena began to occur around the island. Lights flickered, strange shadows moved in the night, and the sea roiled with an unnatural fury. One stormy night, as Robert conducted the final ritual to banish the entity, a violent tempest descended upon the island. The lighthouse's beacon flickered, threatening to go out, and Robert realized he had underestimated the entity's power. With a deafening crash, the lighthouse's tower collapsed into the churning sea, taking Robert with it. The island was plunged into darkness, its guiding light extinguished. In the aftermath, as the storm subsided, the island remained cloaked in an eerie silence. The malevolent force that had been sealed within the lighthouse for over a century was finally free, and the island's secrets were buried beneath the sea. To this day, the Rockhaven Lighthouse remains a haunting, abandoned relic, its sinister past lost to the depths of time. The islanders dare not speak of the secrets that lie beneath the waves, but those who know the true story of the lighthouse keeper's sacrifice understand the price that was paid to protect the lives of countless sailors years past, and the islanders avoided the abandoned Rockhaven Lighthouse, believing it to be cursed. Ships that once navigated the perilous waters of the coast with the lighthouse's guidance now found themselves at the mercy of treacherous currents and hidden reefs. The island became a place of superstition and fear. Meanwhile, Robert's story lived on in the memories of those who knew him, a tale of a brave lighthouse keeper who had faced a malevolent entity to protect his fellow seafarers. His name was whispered in reverence, and his legacy became a part of the island's folklore. One summer, a group of curious researchers arrived on the island, drawn by the legends surrounding the abandoned lighthouse. They were determined to uncover the truth hidden beneath the waves. Armed with modern technology and historical records, they set out to investigate the remains of the lighthouse. As they explored the underwater wreckage, they discovered an eerie, pulsating energy emanating from the very spot where the lighthouse's tower had once stood. It was as if the malevolent entity had never truly left, its presence lingering in the depths of the sea. Undeterred, the researchers continued their investigation, determined to understand the entity's nature and the secrets of the lighthouse's dark history. They studied the ancient journals and conducted rituals to communicate with the malevolent force. Over time, they learned that the entity, while malevolent, was also tormented by its own captivity. It had been bound to the lighthouse against its will and had sought a way to escape for centuries. With their newfound knowledge, the researchers devised a plan to help the entity find peace and redemption. They performed a ritual that would allow it to pass on to the afterlife, breaking the centuries-old curse that had plagued the island. As the ritual reached its climax, a powerful surge of energy emanated from the sea, and the malevolent force was released from its eternal prison. It manifested in a swirling vortex of mist and light, its form shifting and contorting before gradually dissipating into the atmosphere. The island, once plagued by darkness and fear, was bathed in a brilliant, cleansing light. The curse had been broken, and the lighthouse that had stood as a beacon of both hope and despair was no more. In the years that followed, the researchers' findings shed new light on the history of the Rockhaven Lighthouse. It was no longer a place of fear and superstition, but a testament to the courage of a lighthouse keeper who had faced unimaginable darkness to protect the lives of others. The islanders once again began to speak of the lighthouse with respect, and ships found safe passage along the coast under the guidance of a modern, automated beacon. The memory of Robert, the lighthouse keeper who had sacrificed himself to protect the island, lived on as a symbol of bravery and resilience, a reminder of the power of human determination to confront even the most malevolent forces of the past. Story 7. Nestled at the edge of a forgotten town, surrounded by thick woods, stood an old, dilapidated carnival. It was a place where laughter and joy had once filled the air, but it had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. One crisp autumn evening, a group of adventurous friends, including Sam, Lily, and Ben, decided to explore the eerie remnants of the forgotten carnival. They had grown up hearing stories of the strange occurrences that had led to its abandonment, and their curiosity had finally gotten the better of them. As they ventured deeper into the overgrown carnival grounds, they noticed that the rides and attractions remained surprisingly intact, as if frozen in time. The Ferris wheel stood like a sentinel, its creaky joints protesting the passage of years. The carousel was adorned with ornate, hand-painted horses that seemed to watch their every move. Despite the eerie silence and the sense of being watched, the friends couldn't resist the allure of the carnival. They decided to take a ride on the carousel, each choosing a beautifully crafted horse. As the ride began to turn, a soft, haunting melody filled the air, emanating from an ancient calliope. The melody was both enchanting and melancholic, and it seemed to awaken something deep within them. The friends couldn't help but lose themselves in the hypnotic music as the carousel spun faster and faster. As the ride reached its crescendo, they were transported to a different time, a time when the carnival had been alive with laughter and merriment. Colorful lights illuminated the night, and the air was filled with the joyous sounds of children's laughter. The friends were no longer sitting on the carousel. They were children once again, their faces filled with wonder and delight. They rode the spinning horses, their laughter blending with the cheerful melodies of the calliope. But as quickly as it had begun, the illusion shattered, and they found themselves back on the old, decrepit carousel. The calliope fell silent, and the carnival returned to its eerie, abandoned state. Sam, Lily, and Ben exchanged bewildered glances, struggling to make sense of what had just happened. They realized they had experienced a glimpse into the past, a moment of joy and innocence that had long been forgotten. As they left the carnival grounds that evening, They couldn't help but feel a profound sense of nostalgia and a newfound respect for the place. It wasn't a cursed or haunted carnival, as the legends had suggested, but a portal to a time when happiness had thrived. The friends vowed to return to the carnival, not as explorers seeking thrills, but as caretakers of a forgotten memory. They would honor the place and its history, ensuring that the melodies of the calliope and the echoes of children's laughter would never be truly abandoned or forgotten again. And so, the forgotten carnival found new life, not as a place of fear, but as a testament to the enduring power of nostalgia and the ability to revisit the past through the magic of memory and imagination. The friends kept their promise and returned to the forgotten carnival, not only to explore its haunting beauty but also to preserve its legacy. They began clearing away the overgrown foliage and repairing the dilapidated rides, slowly bringing the carnival back to life. As word of their restoration efforts spread throughout the town, more and more people came to visit the once forgotten place. Families rediscovered the joy of riding the Ferris wheel and the carousel, and children's laughter once again filled the air. The town rallied behind Sam, Lily, and Ben, forming a committee to help fund the restoration and ensure the carnival's future. Volunteers spent weekends painting rides, fixing booths, and planting flowers. It became a community effort to revive the forgotten carnival. As the years passed, the carnival flourished, not as a profit-driven enterprise, but as a labor of love. People from neighboring towns and even distant cities came to experience the magic of the place. The calliope's haunting melody, which had been silent for so long, played once more, enchanting visitors with its timeless tunes. One day, an elderly man named Mr. Jenkins approached Sam, Lily, and Ben. He had been a carnival worker in his youth and had many stories to share about the golden days of the carnival. He had fond memories of the calliope's music and the joy it had brought to countless visitors. Touched by Mr. Jenkins' tales, the friends decided to honor him by giving him the privilege of playing the calliope during the carnival's grand reopening. As he cranked the ancient instrument to life, the haunting melody filled the air, and for a moment, the carnival was transported back in time. Sam, Lily, and Ben watched as children's faces lit up with wonder, just as their own had on that unforgettable evening when they first experienced the carousel's magic. The joy and innocence of the past lived on in the hearts of those who visited the carnival. Over the years, the carnival's restoration had become a symbol of hope and resilience for the town. It was no longer a place of fear or mystery, but a testament to the power of community, nostalgia, and the enduring magic of childhood. As the sun set on another day at the carnival, the friends stood together, their hearts filled with pride and gratitude. They had not only preserved a forgotten memory, but had also created new ones for generations to come. The once forgotten carnival had found a new purpose and a new lease on life, a place where the past and present converged in a timeless celebration of joy, laughter, and the enduring spirit of a community that refused to let go of its cherished memories. Story 8. In the heart of the bustling city, in a dusty corner of an antique shop, sat an old camera. It was a peculiar-looking device with intricate brass details, worn leather, and a lens that seemed to hold a certain malevolent charm. The camera had a sinister reputation, passed down through generations of antique dealers as the cursed camera. It was said that anyone who possessed the camera would suffer a terrible fate. The stories told of photographers who had vanished without a trace or met with gruesome accidents shortly after acquiring it. The camera had changed hands countless times, leaving a trail of misfortune in its wake. One day, a young aspiring photographer named Emily entered the antique shop. Drawn to the camera's vintage allure, she inquired about its price. The shopkeeper, a superstitious man with a nervous disposition, hesitated but eventually agreed to sell it to her at a steep discount. Emily was undeterred by the stories of the camera's curse. She believed in her own talent and was determined to unlock the mysteries hidden within its lens. That very afternoon, she loaded the camera with film and ventured out into the city to capture its secrets. As Emily snapped photographs of the bustling streets, she couldn't help but notice that the camera had a peculiar knack for capturing the darker, more hidden aspects of the city. Her photographs were filled with shadows, eerie reflections, and ominous silhouettes. Intrigued by the camera's unique perspective, Emily decided to delve deeper into the city's mysteries. She photographed abandoned buildings, neglected alleys, and forgotten places. With each click of the shutter, she felt herself drawn further into the camera's malevolent charm. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city plunged into darkness, Emily captured a photograph that would change her life forever. In the image, a ghostly figure emerged from the shadows, its hollow eyes fixed on the camera. It was a spectral presence that sent shivers down her spine. Terrified yet unable to resist, Emily continued to photograph the apparition, capturing its eerie movements as it beckoned her deeper into the heart of the city. It was as if the camera had become a portal to another realm, one inhabited by restless spirits. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's obsession with the cursed camera grew. She couldn't sleep, eat, or think of anything else but capturing the spirits that seemed to surround her. Her once vibrant life began to wither, and she became a shell of her former self. One fateful night, Emily followed the spectral figure to an abandoned, decaying mansion. She entered the dilapidated building, her camera in hand, and ascended a creaking staircase that led to an attic shrouded in darkness. As she raised the camera to capture the final photograph, a bone-chilling voice whispered in her ear, "Join us." In that moment, Emily realized the truth. The camera was not cursed. It was a conduit to a realm of vengeful spirits who sought to claim her as one of their own. It had lured her into their world with the promise of capturing their secrets. With a surge of determination, Emily flung the camera aside and fled from the attic, leaving behind the sinister apparitions that had ensnared her. She knew that the camera's malevolent charm had nearly consumed her, but she had managed to break free. As she emerged from the abandoned mansion, she vowed to never let the cursed camera fall into the hands of another unsuspecting soul. She would keep it hidden away from the reach of those who sought to unlock its dark secrets, knowing all too well the terrible fate that awaited those who dared to use it.